What subject are you studying in the school? What is your favorite subject?
English. English. My favorite subject is English.
Hello everyone, welcome to our presentation. It's time to talk about the last chapter of the book. And the chapter is called Comparing and Evaluating Methods. Some suggestions, and also we are going to talk about the natural approach versus the direct method. So let's get started. Well, I'm going to start with the first subtopic of this chapter that is called Comparing Methods. And most of these methods have been mentioned for the previous groups. And I'm just going to mention some differences that they have and also some things that these methods have in common. Well, comparing elements at the level of design, we find that total physical response, as we know, this method is part of the direct method. And this method typically has a gradient, syllables with pace, introduction of structures and vocabulary, while community language learning has no syllables and operates out of what learners feel they know. Also, in total physical response, the teacher's role is one of drill master director and motivator, while in community language learning, the teacher is a counselor, supporter, and facilitator. At the level of procedure, we find that total physical response language practice is largely mechanical, with much emphasis on listening, while community language learning language practice is innovative, with emphasis on production. Well, I'm going to mention some elements that these methods have in common. For example, in approach, both total physical response and community language learning see stress, defensiveness, and embarrassment as the major blocks to successful language learning. They both see the learner's commitment, attention, and group participation as central to overcome these barriers. And at the level of design, neither total physical response nor community language learning assumes method-specific materials, but both of them assume that materials can be locally produced as need. Natural approach versus direct method. Well, as we know, in natural approach, there is an emphasis on exposure or input rather than practice, optimizing emotional preparedness for learning, a prolonged period of attention to what the language learners hear before they try to produce language, and a pleasure to use gradient and other materials as a source of comprehensible input. While in direct method, this one focuses on language use instead of language structure and grammar rules. Methods and language curriculum development. From the perspective of language curriculum development, choice of teaching method is one phase in a system of interrelated curriculum development activities. Choice of teaching approach or method, materials, and learning activities is usually made within the context of language program, design, and development. Curriculum development requires needs, analysis, development of goals and objectives, selection of teaching and learning activities, and evaluation of the results of the language program. So let's see a little bit about them. Needs analysis. Needs analysis may focus on the general parameters of a language program or a specific need, When we talk about general parameters, we talk about who the learners are, their present level of language proficiency, teacher and learners' goals and expectations, the teacher's teaching skills, and level of proficiency in the target language. The objective of needs analysis is to identify the type of language skills and the level of language proficiency the program should aim to deliver. Well, my classmate is going to continue.
Hello. Now I'm going to talk about the formulation of objectives in the comparing and evaluating methods. A well-designed course supports students in achieving the learning objectives, and the examination will measure to what extent students have achieved these learning objectives. This will of course only be possible if the objectives have been properly formulated. Correct formulation of the learning objectives involves both the content and the language. Carefully working through the formulation of objectives is one good way of clarifying exactly what the learning objectives should be, not only for teachers but also for colleagues, for students, and for those involved in the examination. Objectives detail the goals of a language program, and they identify the kind and level of language proficiency the learner will attain in the program, but of course if the program is successful. As teachers, we must be careful at the moment of formulate objectives, because those must be specific with a clear information for our students, because we want that they understand what we need to convey in order that they learn something good in the class. Without clear statements of objectives, question of content, teaching and learning activities and experiences, materials, and evaluation cannot be systematically addressed. In cases where a specific method is being considered for use in a language program, it is necessary for the program planner, the teacher, to know about what the objectives of the method are and the kinds of language proficiency it seeks to develop. Because if we're teaching children, we must use an adequate vocabulary in the objectives in order that our students do not get confused. Formulating objectives from a student's perspective. Learning objectives are best formulated from a student's perspective. Approached in this way, the formulation will provide a base for examining the learning outcome and will determine a course's effectiveness. Learning objectives also give students a foothold, as these indicate what they are expected to have achieved by the end of the course. SMART criteria for formulating objectives. The acronym SMART is a prompt for formulating learning objectives. This letter stands for the 5 criteria which learning objectives must meet and which you can use to check your learning objectives against. The first one is specific. The learning objectives is not vague, but rather describes concrete conditions and clear results. The second one is measurable. The learning objective has been formulated in such a manner that based on this formulation it can be measured or examined whether students have achieved the learning objective. Then we have acceptable. The learning objective has been formulated in such a manner that the students can see the significance of it. For example, the learning objectives appeal to them or they see how it will benefit them once achieved. Realistic, the learning objective must be feasible and attainable within the available means, time limits, and provisions. And finally, time-based or time-related. The learning objective must set a moment by which time it must have been achieved. For example, the phrase by the end of the course.
Hello, good morning. It's time to talk about selection of teaching and learning activities. In this time, I'm going to share with you selection of teaching and learning activities. This topic is very interesting because it's about teaching and learning activities. Sometimes one decision has been made about the kinds and levels of language proficiency the program is designed to bring about teaching and learning activities. Also, the activities can be chosen. The classroom activities and materials are hence accountable to goals and objectives and are selected according to how well they address the underlying linguistic skills and process learners will need in order to attain the objectives of the program. That is to acquire specified skills and behaviors to attain a particular level or language proficiency. So, let's continue with teaching activities. Teaching activities interrupt teaching is all about instructing the student in a way that are actively involved with their learning process. There are different ways to create an involvement like this. Most of the time, it's through teacher-student interaction. Student-student interaction. They use some audio, visual, or video, and hands-on demonstration and exercise. So, in this, it's very important the interaction between students and teachers because we already know that not only students are going to learn, also teachers are going to learn about the students. So, teaching and learning activities. And some activities could be mini projects, demo of software, ingredient tools, and classroom activities. It could be classroom session, redesign, analyze the requirement, case study discussion, quizzes, assignments, problem solving, games, and role plays. And there are more activities that teachers can do during the class. And also we have workshops. Learning activities are passive and designed to present important information to students in an effective way. As you know, the activities should have an objective. When teachers are prepared the lesson plan or any activities, they should have into account that each activity has a purpose, an objective, and so on. we have some examples. Examples include lecture, watching videos, or demonstration, and readings. Although traditional methods of teaching vary by discipline, these are the most traditional ways of teaching. So, this is very important about learning and teaching activities. So, also, um, the curriculum develops typically processed with caution since there is a great deal that is unknown about second language. At this phrase in curriculum development choice of a particular method can be justified only when it is clear that there is a close degree of fit between the program's goal and objectives and the objectives of the method that I was telling you. Each activity has different purpose and it has an objectives. That is something that teacher has to keep in mind. Every activity has an objective, and that is about learning. In science learning, we have activity of learning. Also, we have context for learning and the social interaction for learning, and we have the learning. That is about learning activities. And there are a lot of learning activities or teaching activities that we can interact with the students. The teacher can interact with the students, and also teacher can encourage students to pay attention in classes. They can have they should have enthusiastic funny the class, and the activities should have very enthusiastic during the class. So this is all for me, and my classmate is going to continue.
Hello, and to continue with the topic, today I'm going to tell you a little bit about evaluations. Well, let's start with evaluations. Evaluation. Evaluation, what is evaluation? Evaluation refers to the procedures for gathering data on the dynamics, effectiveness, acceptability, and efficiency of a language program for the purpose of decision making. Basically, evaluation addresses whether the goal and objectives of a language program are being attained. That is, whether the program is effective. In cases where a choice must be made between two possible program options geared to the same objectives, a secondary focus may be on a relative effectiveness of the program. Evaluation may be concerned with how teachers, learners, and materials interact in classroom, and how teachers and learners perceive the program's goals, materials, and learning experiences. The relative short life span of most language teaching methods, and the absence of a systematic approach to language program development in many language teaching institutions are largely attributable to inadequate allowance for program evaluation in the planning process. We We will outline the different dimensions of evaluation that could be applied to the approaches and methods we have discussed. And the first one is needs assessment. The purpose of need assessment is to identify requirements and the knowledge and the abilities needed to achieve the requirements. Assessment literally involves understanding how assessments are made, what type of assessment answers what question, and how the data from assessment can be used to help teachers, students, parents, and others to make decisions about teaching and learning. These are the subtopics of the main topic that is needs assessment, but all of these are together with the next one that I will mention later. And for example, administrative consideration, instructional consideration, logistical consideration, psychosocial considerations. Organization exists for many purposes in both the public and private sectors. In a gross economic sense, they may be characterized as for profit or not profit, and their ultimate purpose may be manufacturing, sales, finance, or service. Learning objectives. Learning objectives are statements that define the expected goal of a curriculum in terms of demonstrable skills or knowledge that will be acquired by a student as a result of instruction. Learning objectives can be tied to competence maps, also known as institutional objectives, learning outcomes, and learning goals. Program designing. Program designing basically means to design activities to help the learner achieve appropriate intended outcomes. Also, an experimental learning model and its components. For example, experience, share, process, generalize, and apply. And there are topics like as said before in the program design that is there are methodology, materials, evaluation, method, there is the method, approach, design, procedure, etc. That's all for me, and my classmate is going to continue with the next topic.
Hello teacher, today I'm going to follow the topic comparing and evaluating methods, some suggestion natural approach versus direct method, and I'm going to talk about the subtopic evaluating methods. The evaluating methods are those that help to change or improve the educational system based on data. If the evaluation methods were available about the method, we have analyses that we could expect to find answer to such general question as what kind of method is the most effective with elementary, intermediate, or advanced learners? What kind of training is required of teachers? How have teachers and students respond to the method? And how does the method compare with other methods? Answer to questions like this will help make relevant decisions to change the methods in the language program. However, in order to answer this kind of questions, we look to 4 kinds of data: descriptive, observational, effectiveness, and comparing data. And I will tell you a little about them. And I would like to start with the descriptive data. Well, the descriptive data are objective descriptions and accounts, usually by teachers, of a specific process used teaching according to a particular method. Evaluation specialists sometimes refer to these as decisions, which means that the description of the activity is evaluated. In addition, the circumstances in which it is used and the characteristic of the people involved in the activity. In this case, the students are evaluated. David Cohen refers to the use of such description in foreign language teaching as full first-person description. The advantage of the descriptive data is that it provides a sure organizational memory that over time can become the framework for analyzing the students' progress as they advance from one level to another within an ongoing English language program. Observational data. Observational data refer to record observation of method. Such data can be used to evaluate whether if the method is implemented correctly in the classroom. The observer is not the teacher, but a training observer, and not bad tape record, video equipment, or some other means of capturing the moment-to-moment behaviors of teacher and learners in the classroom. Gathering observational data is much more problematical than obtaining descriptive data, but more essential, since it provides more exact record of what actually occurred. All the methods present in the classroom must be complemented with observational studies. Effectiveness data. The third kind of information needed is data on the extent to which particular methods have been found to be effective. What is needed minimally for this method is documenting status of instances where a method has been used. Save data obtained from the students in relation to the objectives. Our profession will indicate its maturity by means of the candor with which we are able to design, carry out, and report measure of effectiveness in something like normal teaching circumstances. The Lambert French Immersion Program in Canada offers perhaps the closest one can come to a model evaluation study of this kind. Comparative data. The most difficult kind of data is provide that which offers evidence that one method is more effective than other in attaining program objectives. In this method, the program's goals subject to evaluation are select, success criteria are stated, an evaluation design is developed, data are collected and analyzed, conclusions about the effectiveness of the program are drawn, and a report is written. The effectiveness data records the results but doesn't tell us how or why these results were obtained. The comparative data also compares the results but doesn't take into account the actual process and behaviors in the classroom. Language teaching has developed a body of educational techniques, and the search of the ideal method is part of this tradition. Adopting an integrated and systematic approach to language curricular process underscored the limitation of such a search and emphasized the need to develop a more rigorous foundation for our educational practice. Well, this is all for me, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching.